Here with Robbie Rist, and very grateful for him to be here, and thank you for your time to be here.
Oh, my pleasure. Good to be here. Well, it's good to be, I guess I'm at home, so I guess it's good to be here anyway,
So thank you for your time once again. So I would like to talk about how you started off as your career as an actor, and basically start from the beginnings to where you are right now.
Sure. All right. Well, like most kids who ended up in the entertainment business, I was always sort of a ham and a show-off. And I was both a ham and a show-off, and I was obsessed with the 1930s Universal monster movies, the Lon Chaney, Boris Karloff things. I used to watch them obsessively as a kid. And I really wanted to be in one, and so I told my parents, all I want to do is be in movies, I want to be in movies, I want to be in movies, I want to be in movies. And I bitched at them for a really long time, and eventually they just said, all right, look, we'll take the kid on one audition. He'll see how boring it is, and, he will be cured of this disease. And basically I got the job, and then I got the job after that, and then I got the job after that. Next thing you know, that started when I was about 6, and by the time I was maybe 8, I had 40 commercials under my belt, and I'd already worked with Jonathan Winters and Mickey Rooney, all this crazy kind of stuff. So it looked like that was sort of what I was going to be doing for the next little while. And my mom was sort of like, well, I don't really want to drive them around all the time, but you can't really tell a kid once they know how to do something, they can't do it anymore. So every Thanksgiving I get to hear how she gave up 11 years of her life to drive me around, blah, 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 blah. And then, after a while, I've been playing music at the same time, so, since I was a kid, I was playing violin at 3 and piano at 5, all part of that show-off thing. And so I at a certain point, I was doing a lot of music and I was doing a lot of acting as well. When I was 9, I got the Brady gig, and so there was, that was a 6-week job that I'm still talking about in my 40s. And then I just didn't stop really working on camera until I was maybe in my, late 20s. And by then I had started a career as a voiceover guy, around, about 21, maybe 18, something like that. I started going on voiceover auditions and doing pretty well with that line of work. So, and voiceover is, as many people have discovered now, the best job in the world, because it's over fast, you get paid pretty well, and if you have enough gigs going, you're not really stuck into doing anything. And, for somebody who has the attention span of a 4-year-old like I do, it was like the ideal job. So I did that for 25 years or something, and I did like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies, and I did a bunch of commercials and a couple of animated movies. There's a movie called Balto that Steven Spielberg's company came out with. So I did a bunch of that stuff, a bunch of TV commercials, cartoons, whatever. And so I did that for a while, and then in the last couple of years I moved into, I produced a horror movie a couple of years ago called Stump the Band. And if you go to www.stumptheband.com, there's a trailer up there and the thing's available for sale. I hope everyone who reads this or hears it goes out and buys it. So I'm doing that as well, and I'm doing, now I've moved into producing people trying to get into voiceover. I help them out, stuff like that. I'm also kind of a, entertainment consultant kind of dude. So I think that's kind of the story.
Who's been your most influential figure through your whole career, if it be someone from movies or from anyone?
Most influential person, that's interesting. I don't know, because I never, probably be my mom. She spent the most time with me. And I've always been kind of a trench warfare guy. I was never on a series for 5 or 10 years. I'm not like any of the people on, Full House. I'm not even like any of the other cast members of the Brady Bunch. They were on that thing for 5 years. I was on it for 6 weeks. So pretty much most of my and just sort of go from gig to gig. So as far as influential people, it's probably my mom more than anybody. She's the one who kind of said, if you act like a douchebag, I'll take you out of it. And I'll make another one that looks just like you. So I guess we'd have to say her. Other than that, along the way, there's been, Lloyd Schwartz, the producer of Brady, had some good things to, kind of say to me when I was a younger guy. And at some point, I don't remember who the actor was, but somebody told me, if you're going to be in the entertainment business, it's an endurance race. You're going to work sometimes and you're not going to work other times. So the idea is to not specialize. The idea is to do as many possible things as you can. So if you can, do stand-up. If you can, do on-camera acting. If you can, do a voiceover. If you can, just do everything, because when one thing isn't making you any money, maybe something else can. But yeah, I think that answers that question.
Man, when people were talking about the Brady Bunch and how they say once they introduce your character on that show, it kind of had a cloud over it, and they say they kind of jumped the shark with that.
Oh, that thing, yeah.
Yeah.
I disagree with them wholeheartedly, because the truth of the matter is that show jumped the shark, I would say, around Hawaii. And that's 2 years before I even showed up. It is funny, though, that, for something that lasted 6 weeks, that character is one of the most maligned characters in television history.
What was it? Oh.
I've talked about this before. There was a website out, I don't know if it's still up or not, it might be, but there was a website out called whowouldyoukill.com. And overwhelmingly, of all of the people that are talked about on this website, that Cousin Oliver character has the most posts. So much so that a friend of mine, a musician friend of mine, who's kind of computer savvy, this would go back a few years, he made a little booklet out of all of the postings of things that people wanted to do to this character. It's just amazing.
Were you kind of a little bit nervous being around like a show like that? And
no, I mean, by the time I did Brady Bunch, you mean Brady Bunch?
Yeah, Brady Bunch.
Yeah, no, by the time I did that show, I've been working for 3 years solid. I was pretty fearless. The crazy thing about doing so much work when you're that young is I don't get starstruck. Well, I do, but I only get starstruck for people that nobody knows who they are. Oh. You could put me in a room with Tom Cruise and I go, hey man, nice to meet you. Oh, big head,
Oh, all right.
Yeah, but like my voiceover agency has clients named John Saxon. John Saxon is a B-movie actor. He was on Dallas for a few years, but he was primarily known in the 70s as the sort of B-movie Charlton Heston. He was in Enter the Dragon. He's the white guy in Enter the Dragon, the Bruce Lee movie, and so John Saxon is like an idol of mine. I'm a big fan of B-movie character people, because I think that's a much more interesting career to have than sort of a leading man who just makes a boatload of money, which is why I'm poor today. But John Saxon, I'd never met him before, and I'm sitting in the lobby waiting for to go in to do my audition, and in walks this older guy. Now he's in his 70s, and I'm like, this guy that looks like John Saxon. And I'm like, I'm sitting there sweating, because I'm like, oh my God, it's John Saxon. This is like the coolest thing in the world. And I turned to him at one point and I said, I never ever do this, because I don't get starstruck, but are you John Saxon? And he's like, yes, I am. I'm like, oh my God, my name's Robbie. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm a really big fan, and yours is the career I'd really like to have. And he just stopped for a moment. He looked at me and he went, why? I'm like, you don't understand. I mean, you go and live your career, but you're John Saxon. So, but one of the things about being a kid is, in show business is, I'm so unimpressed by most of it. I mean, I know that where everybody else has this image of it being sort of this glamorous life, I see it as just a bunch of people who have a really hard job. Even Brad it's not an easy job. It's not an easy job for him. You know, I mean, he has to concern himself with. Now, granted, he makes a lot of money, and that takes a lot of the sting out of it. But his whole career could be over tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because that's just kind of how the gig goes.
I can understand. I can understand taking the B movie route because that seems more of a kind of like outlandish, roguish kind of not being with the group, but still, it's a lot more. There's a lot more excitement to it than over lifestyle. But
in the B movie world, because there's less money in it, you're forced to be more creative. All of the people who I'm a big director nut. I mean, if a guy directs a movie that I like, I will follow that person's career. You know, and I will root for them. I'm this way with bands too. If Cheap Trick doesn't make especially great records anymore, but they give me so many good ones. No matter what they put out, I'm going to buy it. I'm going to support the piece. And most of the director guys that I like came from rather inauspicious beginnings. You know, I'm a big Peter Jackson fan, and I was a Peter Jackson fan back with his science fiction films, and he did this crazy movie that's a parody of the Muppets that I would only suggest people with very strong stomachs watch.
Oh, I saw a preview of that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I see.
So, look, I saw Meet the Feebles, and I'm like, this guy's genius. And for most of the guys, most of the people I admire kind of come from that kind of indie world, you know, because they're just, lately, my girlfriend loaned me Robert Rodriguez's book, and I'm fucking devouring it, because it's just like, he totally like approaches it the way that I do, is that you may not have a lot of money, but you still have to make stuff. You know, if you're an artist, you make art.
Yeah, I always feel like when it comes to like cult classics and things like that, you know, even though it doesn't do good, like for budget reason wise, it's still going to get out there no matter what. Still what?
Sure. Well, I mean, the thing is that it doesn't matter what your art project is anyway. The art projects are never finished; they're abandoned. So, you know, because you could just send yourself to an early grave, tweaking your thing over and over and over again. The fact is, these people get things done on no budgets, and they get out there in the world and they go, look, I can get this thing done. You know, I can get this thing done really cheap and have it be really high quality. And that's, you know, I mean, that's why I think most big budget movies just outright suck, because you see that they had all the money and resources in the world, and it just lays there because there's no drive to make it great. You know, if you have a problem, you just throw money at it.
Yeah, I'll definitely agree with that.
I mean, it's basically the only business I think that's run worse than the movie business is the government. Because it's the same thing. If there's a problem, they don't make a people solution out of it. They make a money solution out of it. And it just ends up making everything worse because you're really not putting any thought into it. You're just like, you know, just throw money at it. It'll be fun.
I know. I don't know. People are they're so concerned about how it looks and more of how it performs and things like that. And, you know, it's totally the opposite way. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, back in the 80s is where I first started hearing about not whether a movie was good or not, but how much money it made. And that was somehow a measure of how good it was. And I don't know, you know, It's a Wonderful Life bombed when it came out. Nobody went to go see It's a Wonderful Life, and now it's considered one of the great pieces of American cinema. So, you know, what does that mean? You know, if something makes a lot of money, is money what makes something good? Not, you know, I don't think in my world.
Agree with you on that. So anyway, when you were at the point where you were not acting as much, and then you went on to voice acting, what were your feelings between that limbo period during that time?
Well, I was somewhat prepared. Well, I never really had a limbo period, because by the time I sort of stopped working on camera, I was already doing a lot of voiceover, so I was pretty happy to say goodbye to on camera, because I don't like getting up at 4:30 in the morning. So most voiceover jobs, you know, they start at like 10 or 9, like most normal jobs do, and you know, you're there for an hour and you get So, but now I'm sort of like, it's the way, now I'm just sort of like looking to get into on camera just because, to me, there's now no difference between everything. Everything is just art. So I just want to do whatever. If you're making a movie, put me in it. If there's anybody who reads this is doing low budget movies and they can afford to fly me somewhere and pay me a little money for it, hell, I'll do it. Right now I just want to work. We're in the age of YouTube, so the more stuff you have out, just the more stuff you have out.
What was your first ever voiceover job?
Well, my first ever voiceover job was a kids record with Mickey Rooney that I did in 1971, something like that, 1970, 1971, and then I don't know, probably when I was 18 or 19, when I started really going on auditions, I just did a bunch of commercials and stuff like that. So, but I started most of my career stuff started when I was really, really young.
Did you meet other famous voiceover guys along the way?
Oh well, in the 80s and 90s, I met them all. I never met Dawes Butler, and I think I crossed paths with Mel Blanc once. Although a guy that I went to high school with, a friend of mine named Bob Bergen, Bob is the voice of Porky Pig now. And the crazy thing about him is, I was already doing voiceover, when I was in high school, and Bob and I were friends, and he was so envious of the fact that I got to do this job because it's all he wanted to do. And as an adult, he gets the job of Porky Pig. I'm like, man, that's pretty ambitious. Those are big shoes to fill. But yeah, I met Don LaFontaine, I met, I met all the guys who played the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Oyster Reed for things all the time,
How was that when you got the part for Turtles?
Well, I didn't know how well it was going to do, but I knew about the comic books. I was in a band with some guy who was a comic book obsessive, and he was way into the Turtle thing. And the Turtle comic books were not very kid friendly. They were way darker. When they started out, they were in black and white. And,
Yeah.
But I knew about it, and basically I got the job because really at that time the sort of surfer character, as an archetype, was pretty prevalent. And me being from the San Fernando Valley, I grew up with those guys. For me, Fast Times at Ridgemont High is a documentary. It's not a movie. It's a slice of life of people who I really knew. All of the characters in that film are people that I went to high school with. So